We wanted to take a minute out of our day to reflect on one of the most profound events in American history. There's been much written and much said about September 11th, but to date, there's been very little said about the wildland fire community and BLM in particular's connection to this very, very tragic event. My name is Michael Campbell. I'm with the Bureau of Land Management. And joining me today is Chris Papen from the Bureau of Land Management's Northwest Oregon District to discuss his connection to September 11th and in particular Ground Zero. So Chris, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. And we're going to just ask a series of questions and kind of talk a little bit about what happened and what your experiences were. So let's start from the very beginning. Where were you on 9/11, and when you first got the news? What were your initial thoughts, not as a wildland firefighter, but just as an American citizen? What were you originally thinking?
Great, and thanks for having me,
Michael.
Yeah. Well, I was on my way to the field. I was working what it was then the Salem district on September 11th, 2001. And I hadn't listened to the news. So I was in a work vehicle. I was heading towards Tillamook. And I stopped and got some fuel. And the gas attendant said, "Hey, have you heard the crazy stuff that's going on back east?" And probably the first thing in my mind, I said, well, that's no. But I turned on the news and it was all over the place. It was something about a commuter plane, something about more planes possibly. A lot of information was flowing quickly. The first thing I went to my mind was chaos. I had no idea that maybe in a few days I would be part of a very large organization that helped out with the attacks at that point. About just a little bit further down the road, I already anticipated something large was happening and whether I should just turn around, but it didn't take long and the radio was cleared and our dispatch did bring us all back in from the field that day. And when I got home, that was obviously, I'd called my wife, got a hold of my wife and figured out I think one of the first things you do in these type of situations is call a friend or your family.
Yep.
So it was as anybody, I don't know. I think there's a million stories here, but it was much a lot of information and confusing and also scary. As an American, I was like, wow, this is really happening. Once I was able to see a television, it really started to hit. It was just overwhelming. And of course, the Pentagon at the same time was going on, and then there was talk of other planes in the air, and it just kept going on and on for hours. I think anyone that was probably around that day was glued to something television-wise or radio or some form of communication. Yeah, it was. That's it. I really thought a lot about where all my family might be. I have family back east. I have family spread out, and you're just kind of wondering at that point what else could occur.
Yeah. So when did you first get a sense that the Bureau of Land Management and the wildland fire community might actually be called up to play a role in this effort?
So, if my memory serves, later that evening, I had gone home, and I believe we were called. I got an initial call from, I guess to go back a little bit, I'm a public information officer,
right,
and I'm serving with the Pacific Northwest Team 3. That's a Type 1 national team, and we had a very busy summer. I think we had just really returned from assignment prior to Labor Day of that year. And so in the section I work on in the Command and General Staff, the phone tree started and I received a call and said, hey, we may be called to go back east. Now, at that time, I couldn't tell you if it was the Pentagon or New York City or somewhere
Right.
else. We didn't know. We know we're a support module, and it was a fairly obviously new assignment for these type of teams. So,
So who was the first person that contacted you about the assignment, and what was that discussion like?
that discussion was with Don Ferguson, a
Hmm.
former retired BLM Medford employee, worked with the Type 1 national teams for many years. Awesome individual. He gave me the first call, and we talked, and we were both, I could probably say the conversation was much like now. It was, what does this mean? And no answers. We didn't have a mission in our hand, but I had a lot of confidence in the incident commander, Joe Stutler, at the time of that PNW team. And so I knew if Joe was making those calls and getting us in order, I trusted in that. And that's the beauty of the teams. I knew there was a chain of command and a trust there.
Yeah.
But nervous, yes. I'm thinking, really, is this what I really want to do? But that's what these teams are built for, and not a better group of people to go into that situation.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So when did you arrive in New York City, and what were your first thoughts?
Well, the journey to New York City was an episode in itself. We took off from Redmond, Oregon, from the air base. We congregated in Redmond and had a briefing, and then we were canceled. So we all huddled around the television, watched more of the events unfolding, but we were off. And then it was getting later in the day. That was about the 12th, I would say, the next day.
Hmm.
And we knew that another national team out of the Southwest it was going to be en route to New York City. And we knew at that point there was high probability, if not already ordered, another team to go to the Pentagon out of California, another Type 1 team. And
Hmm.
then we were also in that rotational mix. Where we fit, we didn't know.
Right.
Uh, we had pretty much canceled. I can't describe that feeling either.
Hmm.
Uh, you're ready. You're
Yeah.
ready to go, and you're ready to help. But then you're told no. But
Right.
then a few hours, you get a knock on the door and you're told yes. um, so gear was ready, packed up. I'd already told my wife I'd be home in the morning, but that didn't happen. And so we ultimately flew out of Redmond on the Sierra Pacific contract jet directly. We flew to Sioux City, Iowa in the middle of the night. And then we arrived at McGuire Air Force Base in
Hmm.
New Jersey at 0500. The sun was rising. It was a beautiful day. And we arrived confused and hungry. And they fed us very well at a Air Force base, at the Air Force Base. The most interesting thing, and I don't know that I will ever see a flight like that in my life again. We were only one of a couple planes in the air, and we had fighter jet escort. I believe they were with us the whole time, but as the really saw them well after Sioux City, and they flew off our wings, two of them, and they led us into McGuire, and never saw them again or where they ended up going, but they served their duty, I guess. But
Yeah.
the flight was rather quiet, a lot of anticipation and all kinds of emotions, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we made it. It was 7 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the fog of this tragedy, there were obviously a lot of very unclear roles and responsibilities, what your team was supposed to be doing. But how were you and your incident management team initially received by the folks in New York? And when did your roles and the importance of teamwork, specifically at Ground Zero, become a little bit more clear?
So that excellent question. I thought that's where I mean, to be very humble and not corny here, but the term leadership comes in pretty strong. the IC really took care of us, and we were well accepted. No doubts there. I had no issues. They
Right.
were, for the large scale of the organization was. I've never seen anything like it, and I don't know that I will again, obviously.
Right.
But there was so many branches and divisions, and where we fit in, FEMA actually sent 2 individuals that were, I use the word loosely, but handlers. And in those type of worlds, they gave you a mission. It was a mission. And and it grew. It grew over the 3 weeks that I was there. It changed, just like any incident that our agency is involved in. It changes from the first day to the last day, right?
Yeah.
But we adjusted in accordance. I thought everybody, just had an incredible attitude of helpful teamwork, and our mission was set. We developed an incident command post. We then took on various roles that are not normal. We had supply centers. We developed logistic plans to get more supplies down to the actually right down to ground zero. We helped with urban search and rescue teams. There was thousands of urban search and rescuers, including the dogs, which was absolutely fascinating. They had veterinarian clinics, and it was just overall amazing. And the amount of people that came together to help in a unified mission was something I don't know if you can describe that.
Right.
I don't know what that really meant.
Yep.
It was the cohesion and the ability to communicate was, the cohesion was there, but the ability to communicate was, at the time, the technologies aren't what they are in 2021. So it wasn't, I'm not sure if we had smartphones. I think they were just kind of learning phones. I think they were like really cute flip phones. So the communications were tough. You would think how we work, whether it's in the field or on an assignment, or in how our agency interacts with other agencies, it wasn't that simple. You didn't put a chest radio on and go, hello, here I are. No. There was so many air to ground, the helicopters and airplanes, and then we really did have radios, but they were just team to team type of contact. We brought our own equipment,
Right.
and we set up our own computer system and network also.
Yeah. So I think you touched on this in the last question, but how long did you actually stay there, and what was the first point at which you got to ground zero?
We were there, we stayed till the end of September, and we were replaced by our other Pacific Northwest national team, which is Team 2, and they really did an incredible job. Also, they stayed well into the fall, so they saw a different. It's very much just like a wildland fire assignment at that time. We transitioned, and so we were there for FEMA assignments. Can go a long time. They're not a 14-day and out. Due to probably many various reasons, they did not hold us for 30 days. But I think with transition in the trial, that we were close to a little over 3.5 weeks or so. It was toward right at September when I got home, right around 1st of October. And it went on and on. More teams arrived in different various levels of, as we all know, the final story. I just continued the recovery and cleanup and reconstruction of that area. So yeah, and then as far as where my assignment really led myself and several others were to that Jacob Javits Center, which is in Manhattan, and then from there we helped with FEMA. I worked several days at Pier 91, which is on the Hudson in the lower sections of Manhattan, and we dealt with communications and really the public interest of how FEMA dealt with all of the media. There was media from all over the world. There was, I believe there was a picture I took one morning of, I think there was close to 200 to 300 satellite trucks parked that headed down. They just went as far as you could see.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it was 24/7. The ground zero was not something that was very interesting. The destruction that we saw was not just the two twin towers.
Right.
Multiple buildings were damaged or taken down, and I found that was a large, expansive area. It took a couple hours to by foot. That's about the only way you could travel, and you had to start blocks and blocks and blocks away, and then you would head in. And so you take your gear, very similar to hiking in on any assignment, and but the difference was you were walking these barren streets of New York City into very smoky dust. It was almost surreal in that sense, the amount of damage and the quiet. I would imagine, not knowing New York prior, I have to believe the sounds were amazing. All that was heard was, it was very solemn as the cleanups and the search and rescue, and then it turned into a recovery mission very shortly after, as we all know. Very quiet. People were very solemn, but hundreds and hundreds of people working around the clock.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was a night operation as well as day.
Right. So looking back at this national tragedy some 20 years later now, has your perspective about the event changed? Is there anything that you thought initially that you now see in a wholly different light?
Yeah. It's such a difficult question to answer, and it's probably everyone has a bit of a different look on things in life. And
Sure.
the one thing thinking about that question a little bit, being in the current time we are, there's still something that hasn't changed. The first responders in our country, the firemen, the police officers, the medical up front, the Red Cross, what they've been through just the last couple years, front lines, that's the one thing that comes to my heart. It hasn't changed. Our military, they were there full force. Our National Guard, they are serving. And I look just back 20 years, but I look just to the future now, and they're on the front line still serving. I see one really promising thing I really appreciate the BLM for is the support. We have a lot of a newer generation that now are looking at being part of incident management teams, looking at that future. What's that mean? How does our agency keep that and maintain it? I've seen a lot of excitement in the last few years with younger, newer folks coming on that are well trained and going to lead us into a really good future. And the teams that I were a part of were, most are retired. They were
after 20 years.
Right. It was struggling to fill them, where now I think they have, young, energetic leadership, and that's what it takes. Have things changed in our world? I don't know. Technology has helped us. Our communications would have been better at 9/11 maybe, but the human heart hasn't changed, Michael. People were helping wherever they could. I watched a lot of amazing things that people sacrificed, and we were just a very, very, very small piece of a large time of our history. And to be able to help was just an honor. And Yeah, that's really it. I think we have, our agency is strong in that sense that we have people willing to now continue, whether it's a wildland fire that's going on today
Hmm.
or the next incident that hits part of our country. It seems like we're a go-to agency for that. We have the right skill mix and the right people, the right
Yep.
attitude.
Very well put. Well, Chris, thank you so much for spending a couple minutes. I think this is obviously a very important thing, and the fact that you were there and can give us a very different perspective, I think, than most have, is of incredible benefit to our agency and really to the American public. And so I just want to thank you for what you did and for spending the time with me talking about this issue.
You're very welcome. I appreciate it too, and thank you so much.